Today we're going to talk about politics, or who gets what, when, and how. And we hear the term politics a lot, so it's worth asking, what is politics? And politics can be defined as a peaceful means of determining who gets both resources and power in a society without the use of violence and how they will be used. There is politics that deal with government. There's also politics in other parts of life. And one of the most important concepts when we deal with politics is the idea of power. This is a term that's thrown around a lot, but power is the ability to get people to do what you want them to do. Now, power is different than authority. Authority is power that citizens or a group of people believe is legitimate and agree to basically follow. So you can have power without authority, but authority is a certain type of power. And when we talk about politics, usually we're talking about government. And when we understand government, it's a part of what is known as the social order. And a social order, quite simply, is how we organize our collective lives together. A good example of this is to think about the city and how 2.5 million people can all live together in a collective place without killing each other all the time. And so government is a system or an organization that exercises power over a group of people. Governments can provide services such as the buses and the L trains. They can protect your individual rights, whatever a society decides that those are. They organize people to live and work together in peace by creating neighborhoods, real estate licenses, laws, and then ultimately government exercises police power in order to enforce this social order. And a big part of government is talking about rules and laws. And rules and laws determine how resources get distributed and collective action will take place or not. And actions in a society can either be mandated, meaning that you have to do them, or prohibited, meaning that you are not allowed to do them. The example would be stealing. And so laws determine our experience as citizens. Imagine for a second if you didn't allow dribbling in basketball, or if all of a sudden stealing was no longer illegal. Imagine how just a very small change to the rule in law would change how we experience these things profoundly. And one of the primary functions of government is the enforcement of law, or the exercise of power, usually through force. And governments are given police power, which means that they can enforce the laws by using brute force. You can be arrested if you break the law, prosecuted if you fail to meet a mandate. And so that's one way of enforcing the law. Another way a society enforces the law is called self-regulation, where people just simply obey the laws. And then finally, there is usually a justice system for determining if people have broken these laws or not, and then giving appropriate punishments. And a justice system can be fair or not fair, but it's a function of government to enforce laws. Another big part of government are institutions. And institutions are organizations or groups where government power is going to be exercised. And an institution would be something like the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, where the state will issue you a driver's license, but you have to go to that place for the government to provide that service. You can think of the police station, the mayor's office, or the White House as places where government power is going to be exercised in ways that will affect the lives of citizens. And a big part of American government is the idea of the social contract. And the social contract says that people agree to live in a society under a government, and they give up their freedom for protection of their natural right. And it's the idea that we all agree to follow the laws so that we're all safer and these situations can work. In America, your natural rights are life, liberty, and property, meaning that we give up some of our freedom so that the government can better protect those natural rights. A great example of social contract is driving on the highway. Think about it. There's not a cop on every corner. There's nobody making sure everybody follows all of the rules, but when everybody agrees to follow them, then everyone gets from point A to point B without getting in a massive accident. And so in the social contract, the government provides laws and protections to the people, and the citizens also have obligations to the state, such as following the law, voting, etc. And governments can be organized in any number of ways, but the two main kind of umbrellas are authoritarian and non-authoritarian. In an authoritarian government, the ultimate power lies with the state and the government, which can exercise power in every aspect of citizens' lives. Good examples of these would be the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin, Nazi Germany, and any absolute monarchy. Non-authoritarian governments say that the ultimate power lies with individuals to make decisions concerning their lives. So the United States of America is a good example of a non-authoritarian government where the government is limited so you can choose different things dealing with your life. So let's talk a little bit about the United States government. The United States is a democratic republic, meaning that we choose people to represent us, which is republicanism, but we vote for them, and that makes it a democracy. In a democracy, the government is the people. There is no king or emperor. The government is simply made up of people. The social contract we talked about before means that you give up that total freedom to protect the important freedoms of the whole community. In the United States, there's also something called popular sovereignty, which means authority of the people, and that it is the people on a kind of a massive scale will decide how government power should be used. These are the laws that we pass. And republicanism simply means that we elect representatives and leaders to govern in our names, and that we don't vote on every single policy. We choose leaders to make those decisions for us, and also to represent our interests. And so here are a couple of principles of the United States government that you may have run into in former classes. The first kind of characteristic is the United States government is limited. There are things the government's simply not allowed to do. There's also this idea of power sharing, known as federalism, where power is going to be shared between the national government in Washington, D.C., and the individual state governments, such as ours in Illinois, in Springfield. There's also the separation of powers, where there are three different branches that each serve a different function within government, such as the power to make laws, enforce those laws, and judge those laws. Within that separation of powers, there are checks and balances, so that no one branch of government can get too powerful. And there are also individual rights guaranteed in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution that mean that you as a citizen are protected against government infringing upon your individual rights. And so to sum up very quickly, the United States government is a representative government. We elect our leaders. The United States government exists on the principle of the rule of law, not the rule of individual leaders. So nobody is above the law, and no law of the land is above the Constitution. It's also a government that guarantees individual rights and separates out the powers of government. And so if we want to understand what the purpose of the United States government is, we can look at the Preamble to the United States Constitution. And this Preamble says, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." And so taking out of that preamble, the goal of the United States government, its purpose is to establish justice, to ensure domestic tranquility, peace in the United States, to provide for the common defense of Americans, to promote the general well-being of its citizens, and to secure the blessings of liberty for both the citizens today and the future citizens of tomorrow. And those citizens are legally recognized members of a political community with both rights and responsibilities. As a citizen, you have rights such as freedom of speech, due process of law, but you also have responsibilities to vote, serve on juries, and be responsible citizens. And so in American society, being a citizen is important because we, the citizens, make up the government. And so this year we're going to be looking at a little bit of political science, which is simply the study of governments and how they work. And so in this class, we're going to talk about the development of that United States government. We're going to talk about the Constitution and debates over the power and role of the U.S. government in the lives of its citizens. We're going to talk about the Bill of Rights and how different groups have had to fight for the protection of those rights and against the unjust use of governmental power. But we're also going to look at how the ideals and laws of the country are only as good as our will to enforce them collectively as citizens of the United States. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness sound like great ideas, but oftentimes Americans have failed to ensure that the country has lived up to those ideals. But fundamentally, when we talk about government in America, we're going to talk about the debate between those who value liberty and those who value order. Liberty simply is going to end up meaning limited government, that the government should have a limited role in the lives of the citizens. Examples of this are those who want lower taxes, fewer laws, and local government controls. And there are going to be many people throughout American history who are going to value liberty and debate against the expansion of the power of government. On the other hand, many Americans will side with the idea of order and an activist government, in the belief that a government needs to be both strong and involved in the lives of its citizens. Examples of these are government programs such as the New Deal and the War on Poverty, regulations on both environmental, health and safety, and others, something as simple as the minimum wage or a Civil Rights Act. And so the key debate in American government from 1776 up to 2015 is going to be this debate between liberty and order, these different values that different citizens are going to prioritize. We're also going to talk about the Bill of Rights this year and how your freedoms are protected in the United States Constitution, and we'll talk about what that means and how it's changed throughout the course of U.S. history. And so politics this year is going to be elections, laws and Supreme Court cases, taxes, use of police power, government programs, and bureaucracy. And so hopefully you found this little intro into politics helpful and come to class ready to discuss these concepts in more detail.